I'm Lauren Kaeseberg, the legal director of the Illinois Innocence Project Chicago office. I'll be talking about some of the reforms and initiatives that are targeted at stopping wrongful convictions. It's obviously incredibly gratifying to work on someone's case for years and then walk alongside them as they leave prison, an innocent person. But another thing that we all really love about working at the Illinois Innocence Project is that we're able to take the lessons from those cases and apply them to the broader system. We've seen in Illinois that lawmakers have listened to the voices of those who've been wrongly convicted in the past and are currently doing so. We all know that videotaped interrogations became the law of the land with serious crimes, and that has made a big difference in allowing defense attorneys and judges to see the interrogation process of suspects. Recently in Illinois, a bill was passed that requires police departments to do eyewitness identification procedures in a more fair and transparent manner. What that bill requires is that police officers who are actually doing the identification procedure with a witness are not the officers who are the lead investigators or investigating the case. What we've seen is that when the main investigator, someone who knows who the suspect is the one leading the lineup for a witness, it just leaves too much room for there to be either purposeful or unintentional cues given to the witness to select the person that they believe to be the suspect. In addition, police departments are now required to have a fair composition of the people in the lineup, meaning that every individual in the photo array or in the live lineup resemble each other and the suspect, so that a witness isn't looking at a lineup where one person stands out much more than anyone else. And finally, one of the hallmarks of this is that a recording is offered to the witness. So when a recording is made, it provides the defense attorney or the judge later down the road, if that becomes an issue, to actually see the procedure for themselves and evaluate how credible the witness's identification was. And the final thing is the witness is to be given proper instructions and told that the person that committed the crime may or may not be in the lineup and that they should feel okay about not selecting someone from that lineup. As we've seen, wrongful conviction cases have 70% of them involve a misidentification by a witness. And so we're hopeful that in Illinois, this bill will go far to hopefully lessen that number. Another change in the law that we're very excited about at the Illinois Innocence Project is that the post-conviction DNA testing statute was recently amended to allow for DNA testing to be requested by defendants who entered guilty pleas. Previously in Illinois, only a defendant who was convicted at the end of a trial was able to avail themselves of the DNA testing statute and request testing. But we've seen that innocent people do actually plead guilty to crimes, especially when faced with the death penalty or life sentences or some incredibly harsh sentence. Innocent people have pled guilty to avoid that and hoping that they could clear their names at a later time. At the Illinois Innocence Project, we've recently launched an initiative to focus on guilty plea cases. So we're currently accepting referrals of cases that resulted in a guilty plea and an attorney believes that person to be wrongly convicted. And we're working on some DNA cases as we speak. We've seen that so much power in these cases of wrongful conviction rests with prosecutors. And while we all know that prosecutors have always had a special duty to do justice under the rules of professional conduct, this year a rule change was made, and Rule 3.8 now requires that when a prosecutor learns of new, credible, material evidence of innocence, that they must seek to remedy that conviction. Part of the rule also includes a notification requirement to a defendant, as well as the appointment of counsel for the defendant. We're very encouraged by the fact that prosecutors have formed conviction integrity units around this state and around the country, but clearly more needs to be done. We've seen a lot of litigation where it just eats up years of people's lives. And so we're very excited by the fact that the Supreme Court has recognized and that this rule exists to, ensure that prosecutors do the right thing when confronted with this type of evidence. So I mentioned conviction integrity units as part of the role of the prosecutors in doing the right thing and remedying these wrongful convictions. And throughout the state of Illinois, there are several state's attorney's offices which have conviction integrity or conviction review units. And we've seen the uprise of this throughout the country as well. And we see it as a really good sign that prosecutors are taking this issue seriously. As a lawyer, it's very rewarding to enter into a cooperative process with prosecutors when possible to try to actually remedy a conviction and do the right thing. It's not always a guarantee that you'll get the result that you feel is warranted for your client and may end up in litigation at a later point. But at the Illinois Innocence Project, we worked hard to work cooperatively with prosecutors' offices and especially conviction integrity units when possible. It's at least a recognition that those offices acknowledge that mistakes have been made or could have been made in the past, and that they're using resources towards trying to remedy them and do the right thing and seek justice in those cases. And finally, at the Illinois Innocence Project, we're very excited about our most recently launched initiative, the Latino Innocence Initiative. In 2015, one of our clients walked out of prison after spending 21 years wrongly incarcerated for a rape that he didn't commit, and he was of Mexican descent. And after learning from him and looking at a lot of the requests that we get in our office, we saw that there is a real issue with Latino defendants in courts and suspects in police stations that needed to be addressed. And as I've talked about during this presentation, we've been able as a movement to use wrongful conviction cases to advance reforms where they're needed in the criminal justice system more broadly. And one of our goals is to really take a close look at cases involving Latino defendants and see if we can do the same thing. So what we've seen is a lot of false confessions. So individuals who are brought into the police station and maybe don't speak English or have limited English speaking abilities and are signing English language confessions that they don't understand, or being interrogated in English and Spanish as their native or first language. And we see the exploitation of family relationships by interrogators towards Latino suspects and threatening them with deportation of family members, or they'll make their families disappear and they'll never be able to track them down. And so suspects just signing confessions and doing what needs to be done to try to save their family. We also see in the courtroom, there's a lot of obstacles for someone who may not speak English as a first language. As lawyers, we all know that legalese is a real language and it can be difficult to learn it. So if you can imagine it not being your first language as English anyway, being a defendant, having an interpreter talking in one ear, your lawyer talking in the other, two languages going on at the same time, it's a really overwhelming and difficult situation to be in. And there's no requirement that an English-speaking defense attorney ever has a translator outside the courtroom. So there can be very little, if any, communication between family members of the defendant or the defendant and the lawyer themselves. So we've seen a lot of problems in this area, and we're excited to be working on it. And we've got some DNA cases right now that we're starting on, and we hope to really be able to move this issue forward and get some policy reforms that will help this particular community. For more information on wrongful conviction reforms, please view my full presentation recorded during the Hot Topics in Criminal Law program and available in the ISBA online CLE archives.